When I got the telegram, I mean, it was like it didn't even surprise me. I've gotten very accustomed to the fact that not everybody is going to like what I do. I really do think that if there is something that you feel that you really love, there's a way to get into it that will make you happy.
在春天的阳光里，和 Ross 这个活得自在透彻的智者促膝而谈一下午，听他回忆自己选择和追随纪录片的人生道路，真是一大享受。他话说多了，把自己杯子里的咖啡喝完了，又不知不觉地把我水杯里的水也喝完了，发现喝错后开怀大笑，真正一个可爱的人。在这第二部分的访谈中， Ross 分享了他拍摄出自己的第一部纪录长片并获得奥斯卡提名的过程。我重点提出了在追求理想的道路上一些最让人困惑或挣扎的问题，希望读者在听故事的同时能得到些思维和方法论的启示，尤其是对于那些怀揣艺术梦想的人们。
So I started making this film about James Agee's life. I wrote to his best friends, his ex-wives. He had died in 1955. He had died, and this was 1974. So most of his friends are still alive. He died when he was 45 years old. So, and everybody was pretty cooperative. And at that time, when you're young, it's easy to get people to work for free, and so I got my cameraman, Anthony Forma, helped me. People spent like a couple of weeks with me down in Knoxville shooting some of the dramatic scenes from the movie and things like that. And I was just kind of living on part-time jobs and trying to make this film in my spare time. And so, living as cheaply as possible. I mean, the low overhead life is really, really important when you're starting out. And but I was determined to do it, and so it took 5 years.
Wow.
It took 5 years to
That's
make.
your first feature-length film, right?
Yeah, that's my first feature-length film.
You got nomination for Oscar.
And it was, I had a premonition that somehow it was going to not get nominated. I kind of had a feeling it would be. But it was, in order to be nominated, in order to be eligible for the Academy Awards, your film had to have been accepted at least one of these specified film festivals. Okay. And it was turned down by most every film festival except for one. There was one festival in Holland that was one of their eligible festivals, and I sent it to Holland, and they accepted it. So because of that one festival, it made it eligible for the Academy Awards. And so I sent it into the Academy Awards, and they somehow nominated it. And I mean, that was, and when I got the telegram, I mean, it was like it didn't even surprise me.
You knew it.
I somehow, I don't know how, I just had this sense that, it'll be nominated. And it was. And so, went out there to the Academy Awards celebration and all that stuff. But, I mean, it was a great sort of gift to my parents because they had been so worried about me.
They probably had a huge sigh of relief, like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah, of course they did,
So do you feel like that accomplishment is sort of prove to yourself you do have the talent, or this is a path that you can take on for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I mean, I knew that, it was a what's the word I'm trying to think of? I mean, an Academy nomination is like, getting an A+ in class, or something like that. Or it's getting your PhD or something. It says this guy knows what he's doing, and there's always a chance that it might happen again, So Yeah, it was kind of a seal of approval.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I was a kind of a person who, I mean, I was always very close to my family, to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped me a lot in the making of the film, in certain, you know, just like being supportive parents kind of things. I mean, they believed me. They believed in me. I mean, that was rather key for me.
Mm-hmm.
That I had. I mean, they worried about me. And I mean, I had some dark nights there.
Did they ever encourage you?
Did they ever discourage me?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, once I'd started, I mean, once we had gone that far down the line, but I mean, they tried to urge me to get a quote real
job.
I mean, they wanted me to get a real job. There's no doubt about that. But they didn't. You know, this was Johnson City, Tennessee, and I wasn't really living there anymore. I was living in New York with my girlfriend at the time. And so they didn't really, you know much about what to advise me about. They really didn't. I mean, they just hoped that it was going to work out, you know. And they were, you know, and I was doing stuff all along. It was not like I was ever idle. I was not like doing drugs or just messing around or surfing or something like that. I mean, I was really working on this film. And they knew that. I mean, I took all kinds of part-time jobs. I mean, in New York, you know, the common job for artists is to be a cab driver. You know? So I was a cab driver for a certain length of time. I also was a stringer of rackets at the local squash club down on Wall Street. You know, I handed out handbills on the street for some sort. You know, I did a lot of little part-time jobs just to get by, but at the same time, I was always working on this project, and you know, and I knew pretty much what I needed to do in order to make it happen. I mean, one of the problems was, of course, that film stock is expensive. Lab stuff was expensive. You know, I had to have a certain amount of cash to make that happen. I tell people that this is probably the lowest budget film ever to be nominated for an Academy Award, and it may have well been. But you know, but there were enough little. I mean, there were editing rooms you could get very cheaply that were sort of public access editing rooms. There was equipment that you could borrow, public access cameras and so on. You could do things like that in New York at that time.
I think the young people nowadays are so blessed with all. I mean, technology is so accessible and cheap.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
You can make a film with
with this with iPhone, definitely. And
people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and you never really had a plan B, right? Did you ever said to yourself that, you know, if it doesn't work out, I'm going back to the medical school? Or...
Well, no, I didn't. That was probably impossible after a year later. But I did also think, well, okay, I can teach somewhere probably. If necessary, I can always get a job teaching. I did have that in my mind, but I never seriously did it. You know?
Okay, this is it. You know,
yeah. You know, one of the bad parts about this is that you always have to come up with ideas, and nobody's going to do it for you. But the ideas always came. You know, I would be editing, say, AG, and I would get an idea for another film. I would usually get ideas for lots of films, and I would sort of whittle them down into what was doable, and I would whittle it down into which idea was going to keep my attention, because I knew it was going to be years. You know, it takes years to make these long. I was never really interested in short things. I don't know why, but I've always been interested in sort of the big story, and which to me always meant like a 90-minute film, or now it's
series.
Now it's like a series or maybe a 1-hour film, but in 3 parts or something.
So earlier you mentioned that confidence is really important. That for people, because I've heard a lot of people saying, I know what I love to do, but I don't think I'm able to do that. But then everybody have to start from somewhere. Yeah. So and do you feel like, especially for sort of artistic pursuit, that really how important the inborn talent is? That how much is sort of learned mastery. And do you? I mean, some people say, I love painting, but I don't think I'm gonna be a painter because I don't have the talent.
Right.
So what do you do with that?
That's a good question. I mean, I couldn't be a musician. I couldn't be a singer. I mean, probably couldn't be an artist as a painter or something like that. I don't know the answer to that, really. I mean, I knew that my talents didn't lie in the world of fiction filmmaking. I couldn't make a Star Wars film. I couldn't make a Disney animation film. I've tried writing fiction scripts, and it's so hard for me. I have to believe that, and they were really not that interesting. So I'm not talented in the way of writing, like Humphrey Bogart or Billy Wilder or some, or just the Butch and Cassidy and the Sundance Kid kind of movies. I'm not that. That's not my talent. I am talented. I mean, I know that I'm a good cinematographer. Because I've done it enough that I can recognize good images from so-so images. And I know that I'm a good editor. I know I can put things together that they will make sense, And I have to always use myself as a judge, first of all. I'm confident that if something is pleasing to me, that it's going to be pleasing to other people as well. Not everybody. I mean, I've gotten very accustomed to the fact that not everybody is going to like what I do.
That's true.
Some people it's just going to be boring. It's going to be, little kids make fun of me all the time. my friends have children and they say, "Oh, you're making a film about the aunt's sex life," or they have all these little stories that they think are boring, terrible stories that I might make a film about. And so they're interested in Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or something. And so what I do is not interesting to them, and many adults is not going to find what I do interesting. But I like it, and enough other people like it, So that's good enough. And one of the reasons that I've had some success in raising money is that I do take on big ideas. Most of my films have been about sort of large ideas like Southern literature or the environmental history of Appalachia. These are sort of big subjects that I can interest funding sources in making these films, or I can interest PBS into showing it. I'm not sure what question I'm answering here.
We're talking about, how important talent, or how do you know whether you have talents or not?
Yeah, how to deal with your well, if you're really, really interested in music, but you're incapable of singing and you're incapable of playing a musical instrument, then you could probably at least get a job as a stagehand, or as someone who is an engineer who records other people or something like that. You can do things that are on the periphery or on the other side of that field, and then maybe you could go from being an engineer to being a producer. And God only knows, producers is something that is a learned skill. I don't think many people are just born as producers of music. It's a learned skill, but I really do think that if there is something that you feel that you really love, there's a way to get into it that will make you happy. Even if it's kind of like an oblique angle at it, you know, that you know, there's a lot of ways you can enter into a field and then expand that as you the more experience you get. You get into the field, you learn a lot of things, and then you realize there's these other opportunities, you know. You maybe are not going to be like the star singer, but maybe you can sing in the backup group. You know, or you can maybe, you know, maybe you can't be the main drummer for Nirvana, but you can play the tambourine in the side or something.
I think for some people it's like trying to think, if I'm gonna take this as my career, that I like to do this, would I be successful? You know, as in the profession, and I think, of course, you know, sort of a talent or competence, it's all relative.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, to what extent you feel confident that, yes, I can take as this career, or you just think, you know, I can only be an amateur.
Right.
And I think I've seen other people struggling with self-doubt.
Yeah.
That I tend to think, just like what you said, that you will never please everybody. And I think you will never have no self-doubt. That you would be doubting yourself on and off and all the time.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true.
I guess maybe it's just a matter of how to learn to live with that. And
yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, you know, even, you know, as much experience as I have had around making films, I mean, I always get nervous at the premiere because you never know for sure if people are going to walk out, you know. And, you know, and sometimes you fail, but you know, it's a matter of sort of getting back up and just keeping on trying, you know. I mean, not everything that I shoot turns out perfectly, you know. I've had a lot of disasters, really. I mean, you know, I'm talking about a film shoot. You know, you just have to kind of shrug it off and keep going. I mean, it really is persistence is a very important thing.
And what motivates you to persevere and to keep going is, do you think it's just the love of it?
Well, I mean, that certainly helps. I mean, and if you feel like, you know, that you're serving some sort of larger goal, that helps a lot too. I mean, if you think I'm making an educational project that's going to make people more aware of such and such. You know, like right now, I mean, we're trying to make a film that makes people aware of trees. You know, to wake people up to the fact that trees are living beings, things like that.
Sort of a sense of mission.
Yeah, the sense of mission, the sense of serving a larger goal. Sense of helping people in some way.
So I guess, sort of to conclude our conversation, what would be your advice for young people who aspire to find what they're born to do? Yeah. And do you think it's a luxury, or do you
I wouldn't think it was a luxury. I mean, I think everybody has a sort of a obligation to themselves to find something, you know, that they can feel good about themselves doing. I mean, you know, it may be for some people it's an avocation rather than a job. You know, it probably there's room in society for everybody to do exactly the right job. But well, I mean, I really do think that if you're unhappy with your position in life, that it behooves you to keep on struggling and keep on finding something that makes you happy doing. I'm really not good at generalizing from my experience, you know. I mean, I remember I remember one time going to a reunion at my film school, like 20th reunion or something. Maybe it was the 25th. I think I've only been to one. So, and I was dancing with somebody, a student, and she was saying, "Oh, I can't decide whether to go to medical school or whether to try to be a filmmaker."
That sounds familiar.
I said, "Be a medical student. Go to medical school. You'll find it a whole lot more easy." No, I mean, I really, I don't. Unless somebody loves filmmaking, I don't.
It's a difficult journey.
It's a difficult thing, yeah, and I've never made a corporate sort of level of income.
So can we say if the person is asking
Mm-hmm.
whether I should be a filmmaker or a doctor or a corporate position,
If you can get in medical school
or
and you think you can be happy, do it.
because if the person is hesitating,
Mm-hmm.
is that a sign of he or she actually is not loving filmmaking enough?
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. That's a good question. That's a tough question. I mean, I could have probably been happy enough as a doctor. I don't think there's only one thing that you can do
in your life.
to make yourself
Mhm.
happy. I mean, I think I would have found, if I'd gone ahead and gone to medical school, I would have probably found ways to be happy as a doctor. But I'm extremely happy as a filmmaker. I mean, I'm very happy with that decision. But it was not easy. I don't want to pretend that it was. But I see a lot of people I know have kind of like never found their true calling.
True.
And and they've gotten by okay. But I've always kind of felt really lucky and blessed that I did find it somehow, kind of early on in my life, really. And I don't know. I never have been able to know exactly what I could say to these other folks I'm talking about. I never have tried to help them or anything. I mean, they're sort of up to them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Everybody's got to figure out their own life. And
also, I think for some people, it's really the balance of, a certain profession, of course, make a lot more money than others. I know as a documentary filmmaker, I think finance, I remember when I was in that program, after all the sort of technical stuff is done, and the professor said, now we come to the ugly part, which is the finance. We've covered all the exciting and artistic and romantic part of filmmaking, but you have to deal with the finance part, which is not always easy. So I think to you, have you ever feel like that's a problem, or you kind of accept it?
Well, it has always been kind of a problem. I mean, actually, I'm not sure I ever thought that I would make as much money as I have made. I mean, I own this house. I mean, I'm not sure that I ever really thought very seriously about whether I would ever be able to buy a house. It just so happened that I have come up with some ideas that I've been able to raise money for. And from most of my money lately has been from the National Science Foundation, and they give grants that are large enough to pay a decent salary to someone like me. But before that, I was getting by on fairly small salaries. And I mean, I'm not like getting rich or anything, but then there's other people who make a ton of money documentaries even. Ken Burns, for instance. I mean, I'm sure he does really, really well.
But I heard that they make more money in making commercials.
Oh, well, yes. Well, there's that. Of course, that world is always available. There's a lot of people who do commercial. That's their day job. You know, and then they do something else on the side. If you love something enough that you're willing to make $20,000 a year to do it, then that's what you have to do, maybe.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't know. Do I love it enough?
Yeah,
or,
right.
Maybe only when you find that you will know.
Yeah, right. And maybe you do something that you're making $20,000 a year for 10 years, and then you become more successful. You know, like a short story writer, for instance. Maybe you're a short story writer and you're struggling to really learn how to write. And you know you're getting paid $50 a story or something for the first 5 years, and then all of a sudden you kind of it all clicks in your head, and you're writing better, and you're getting bigger money for it.
It's like the 10-year journey to overnight success, right? Right. People only see your overnight success.
Yeah.
And they didn't see you the 10-year.
That's right.
Effort.
That's right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Are we done?
We're done. Yeah, we're
okay,
done.
Great. Well, that's fun.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was great.